This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 324. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to tell the folks about the big show today?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, we're going to review CRUX Linux and tell you where this minimalist distribution fits in and give you a little perspective on its history and what's unique about it. And in the news segment, not only are we going to talk about the news, but Frank from ownCloud will join us to discuss version 7.0. We'll talk about some of our favorite features, where they're going, and I'll toss them a few hard questions that you guys sent into the show. And of course, like every episode, it's our picks and the feedback segment, so huge show today.
Huge.
And I had to start with, for our Runs Linux picks, the future of desktop computing runs Linux. Everybody's seen this video this week. I had to do it, though. I had to, because I think literally 30 people emailed this in as like, Chris, you got to make this Runs Linux. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, I went to go do the feedback for this episode, and it was all this video.
It's like they're trying to tell me something.
Yeah, and it also made it to the subreddit, too. So, but just in case you didn't get to see it, or for posterity's sake, here is the future of desktop computing. And if you're like, oh, okay, this is a guy with a computer, and he's got maybe like a glass desk here. But what you will find is this is a prototype that demonstrates something brand new that builds upon centuries-old ideas of working with paper on your desk, and it uses Linux.
Have Windows side by side, and you switch between windows, between applications, which is always kind of a mental switch, also a mental context switch. And so we thought of how would it be to, if the whole table would be just a digital workspace where you can work with your familiar applications.
The whole table's a touchscreen.
With paper, spreading paper on your desk for reading, for writing,
and I think
for
that's Chromium
whatever,
he's doing there.
and just do that with your computer programs. And that's a prototype of that. We can just use
Google Earth.
Virtually any application like Google Earth, and the screens are very high resolution, and they are capable of touch and multi-touch, and so I can use my Google Earth in a familiar way, but just if it was a piece of paper on my table. So I can use a web browser and just work with a web browser in the same way. Whatever application you are used to,
LibreOffice.
You can use with this system, but
it would appear that they're maybe using a special window manager or something. It draws an extra border around each window, but other than that, it almost looks like the XFCE desktop.
It does. That would make sense to me.
And that's a much more natural way to work with a computer, but without forcing people to learn a completely new paradigm of working, because the programs themselves can be still just those the users are familiar with. So we just adding something to the familiar way.
This always seemed like the obvious way that the Surface, not the tablet Surface, but the original big old table Surface would have gone for Microsoft, right? You put that thing in here, you connect it to a Metro interface. You could have your desk be the Metro interface. The desktop screen's actually you're really getting work done, right? Like he's doing here. He's got his regular desktop screen. You can see he's got a dock right there with his regular Linux apps. He's got the keyboard and mouse off to the side for the demonstration here, and then he's able just to drag Windows down onto his table there. To me, it's like it's one part amazing and one part like, well, yeah, that seems like something we should do. You know,
it strikes me as like I could see it for some applications, but being more difficult for others. I see it being awesome for people that have never used a computer before and they don't have any interest in a mouse or table. But I think it's kind of like the command line versus GUI.
I'm thinking like here though, right? Like I could have this piece of paper like right here, and I could just be flipping through it.
True. I would like to see it a step notch higher and see it like three-dimensional. I mean,
that would be really cool. Yeah, you could tie it with like an Oculus VR or something.
That's what I'm saying.
But what I'm thinking of this too is like you'd have to have something that's flexible enough that you could have stuff covering up your table when you're using this, because you know, you don't like want the computer expecting this part of the UI to be visible to you when you've got like your laptop on the table or something. Because let's be honest, whose desk is 100% clear all the time like that?
If they had a glass desk like this that was adaptive, it says, "Oh, hey, you've put a coffee mug over something." They'd actually adjust.
Like the Surface could. Like that was one of the things Microsoft.
Could.
But I wonder, like, if it
whatever you want to do with it.
So you can
in addition, it's also
you can move it around.
So you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
Worst case.
Yeah.
Content. So we did another
and scrolling
prototype.
would be.
And I suppose if you had your window manager always place the windows in the same place on the table, you just know don't put your drink there because that's where your chat. Like wouldn't it be cool to have like the IRC embedded right there in the table?
Well, and like when you set a can of beer down, it sends everybody in the IRC a can of beer.
Right, yeah. At least a picture of one.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I bought you a beer.
So there you go. That's the desktop of the future. And what's so cool about it is they're developing that under Linux. So
I'd play with it.
Right out of the gate. Yeah, Linux is a first-class citizen. I think that's really, really neat. We have so much show to get into today. So I want to stop and thank our first sponsor, the awesome folks over at DigitalOcean, DigitalOcean.com. I just spun up myself a new droplet yesterday. And what's awesome is you can spin up a droplet right now and get a $10 credit when you use our promo code LAS August. LAS August, all one word. Now here's the thing. DigitalOcean is going to test your metal. You ready for the challenge? It's all lowercase, and just like your Linux file system, it is case sensitive. Now you're a Linux user. I have faith in you. Last August, all lowercase. Why would you want to use that? $10 credit over at DigitalOcean.com. Now what is DigitalOcean? I'll tell you right now. DigitalOcean is simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Users can create a cloud server in about 55 seconds or less, and pricing plans start at only $5 per month. Now, you see why that $10 credit is awesome? And that's going to get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD. Yeah, an SSD, which means your I/O density is tops, one blazing fast CPU, and a terabyte of transfer connected to Tier 1 bandwidth. And DigitalOcean has data center locations all over the world: New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and a brand new one in London. Yeah, I said London because they're fancy, y'all. And also, DigitalOcean has an interface that is tops. Nobody beats their intuitive control panel. And power users can replicate that control panel with their straightforward API. It is mind-blowing. You should go look at it. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code last August to get that $10 credit. Play with the rig for a couple of months. I just set up ownCloud on a dedicated one. I'm like, you know what? Why not have a dedicated rig to ownCloud? Why not? It's still cheaper.
It makes perfect sense because it's like, you're trying to get away from Google. Yeah. Well, here's the perfect way to do it.
Bob's your uncle, right?
Boom.
And what's great about it is, like, I was looking at like the files, the cost to do like Dropbox Pro. Like, why would I do that when I could just have my own DigitalOcean droplet that I control, that I own and rock with root access? And by the way, one of the things that I love is now that I have ownCloud up on my own DigitalOcean droplet, if I ever got spooked or weirded, or I was on a strange box and didn't have access to whatever, I could SSH into my droplet and have all my files right there. It's so cool. And there's so many things you can do. They can be the back-end infrastructure for a project you're working on. You can host your website, your own blog over there. Own it over at DigitalOcean.com. Go set up a Linux box that you have control over and check out their awesome DNS management. The ability to create droplets and back them up on the fly. One-click installation for things like GitLab or Docker or Ruby on Rails. It's crazy awesome. DigitalOcean.com, and use the promo code last August.
I got to tell you, two things that I absolutely live by over there is the BitTorrent sync. I love
buddy.
I love that. And and WordPress. I will never set up WordPress anywhere else. It's got HT password set up by default. It's just great. I love that.
Speaking of BitTorrent Sync, an alternative that we talk about often to BitTorrent Sync is the new open source sync thing. And in the show notes, I'll link to a DigitalOcean post on setting up and configuring sync thing on a DigitalOcean droplet under Ubuntu 14.04. And look at this. It's just here's the installation steps.
Articles. I use these too. I literally do. It's like,
why not,
how do I pound this out? It's like boom.
No, they'll give you the commands to type right there, and you can then you can have your own sync thing box up in the cloud that you control. And then when you're out on the go or you're moving between locations, you have something centralized that you're syncing with on a DigitalOcean droplet. $5 a month, and you can try it out for 2 months for free when you use the promo code last August.
They got some great articles, man.
That's crazy. They're just awesome. So thank you, DigitalOcean, very much. All right, let's talk about something else that's really awesome. My app pick this week.
Yeah.
This one also. This subreddit, Matt. That Linux Action Show subreddit. This one too is Eric, producer Eric.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Every now and then I find an app and I'm like, I'm not gonna put this in the subreddit. This is Chris's secret little app.
Right.
I'm gonna surprise everybody.
It's exciting. It's like,
yeah. So no, but of course, because everybody was talking about it this week, it made it to the subreddit. That's fair play. It's fair play. But if you didn't get a chance to see it, stop everything right now. Nothing in your life is more important than grabbing this app pick. Cool Old Term.
Oh, yeah.
Cool Old Term is a old CRT recreation. Yeah, get your hipster glasses on, buddy, because we are going hipster on our terminal.
It's awesome.
It's retro style, and of course, Matt, because I like a good demo, I've got it set up here. So here we are, and you can see I chose the amber color.
Yeah, that's what I did.
You have a lot of different options. You can go in here and they got, of course, you can go green. You can go Apple. You got to
get the flicker too. You got to get that flicker going.
And I actually tweaked the flicker a little bit because it started to give me the old CRT headache.
No.
I was using it for like 15 minutes. I'm like, I'm kind of getting a headache. But you could choose your different colors. So let's say you can say you want an Apple II style. You go in here and load it. And
there it is.
Now, okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's do something cool like top, right?
Yeah.
Look how wicked awesome that looks.
It's got that killer. It's got the scan line. It's got the flicker. It's freaking cool. I was playing a prank on my wife today, or not today actually. It was yesterday, and I was like, something's wrong with my computer. You might want to come take a look at this. She's like, what the hell happened? Did it time travel? I was like, no, seriously. Man.
It totally looks like it, and it's great. Like you can it's fun bringing up like here's one of my favorite disc-based NCDU. I talk about it all the time. Look how amazing that looks.
Oh my god.
I don't know.
Cool.
There is a bone in my body that gets plenty kinds of tickle when I see this. Like it's just all kinds of delicious tickles, and I just love this.
Man.
Practical uses, none.
Oh no, zero. It's a toy, but it's a great toy.
I'm loving it for like demo purposes on the show. I think it's going to be killer. And here's what's great about it is it's a straight up legit terminal too. It's embedding the Qt console stuff.
Right.
So it's a full-fledged like legit terminal. Like it's going to be able to do what console does.
It really
It doesn't have all the UI features.
And personally, I think anyone that's like getting an introduction into IT stuff, I think they should be forced to use this for hours at a time. I think it'll kind of gets you up to par with the rest of you guys.
So it could be tricky because it's brand new. Yeah. So, but it's cool-old-term. Of course, if you're on Arch. Well, you've already probably got it installed.
Yeah, I was going to say everybody's already gone off on it.
Yeah.
Easy.
But I think there's probably ways. I mean, you could. Oh, get ready for this. Build it from source.
Well, I think there's even standalone executable.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah. I think there is. Yeah, good point. But oh my gosh, that is so awesome.
So awesome. But yeah, limited use CRT headaches for you youngins that don't know what that is. Go play this for a few hours and tell me about it later.
Yeah,
you'll understand. It's good. It's a lot of fun though.
We got a link to an article that tell you how to get it all set up on your machine and stuff like that. So you guys will be fine. And I don't know, man.
It's a good time. It's a good time. It's one of those things where it's just like you got to show people. It's not fun unless you're showing other folks. You know?
Yeah. So this week, BitTorrent released their new sync client called, I think it's Bleep.
Believe it's Bleep.
It's only available for Windows, and it is not open source. These are two things that Chris is not huge on. And so I thought we would spend a few minutes revisiting an old friend of the show, Tox. We've talked about Tox before. It's an open source encrypted chat system, and there's different clients being developed. It's kind of like Tox, there's a protocol, and then you can have front ends, just like HTTP, like there's the web protocol, and you could have different web browsers. So two different clients I want to talk to you guys about today that, I should bring up cool old term again. We should do this in cool old term.
Absolutely.
We should. Okay, so the first one, if you didn't guess, is a terminal app. So let me fire up cool old term again. And it's really straightforward. And this is a Tox chat client, and it's just called Toxic. And I think I have it installed on the Banoobs. Let me see here. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Well, I'll show you the GUI version at least. So here's the Qt GUI version that's in development right now. You can go out and get it. There's a couple, actually. There's a couple of different Qt versions that are in development. In fact, I think I have a couple installed.
Oh, yeah?
Venom is one of them, and then there's Qt Tox. That's another one that's out there right now. And there's, I guess I don't have.
I'm more, for me, I'm familiar with Qt Talks.
There's the one that there's two different projects that have Qt Talks in the name, so it's kind of confusing. Right. The one that is looking kind of good to me is just Q Talks, not Qt Talks, but Q Talks. And here's the GitHub page for it right here. And it's a powerful client that is using Qt on the back end, like you might expect. That's why it's QTalks. Sure. It's got group chats, file transfers, audio calls. It's got video conferencing in alpha right now.
Nice.
Using all talks, which is really awesome.
Very nice.
And they're also currently translating into a lot of different languages, too. So there's a good chance that you might be able to get it in your local language as well.
Something to watch, I think.
Yeah, they've got available for the Mac, the Linux, the Windows, all right there. Here's the UI. It looks pretty clean. Right?
And I think comparison to some of the other alternatives that are in fact like Java-based, I think this is a nice alternative because you got something that's a little less bloaty, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know why Toxic, I had it installed, but I've been pulling crap off this machine like redonk.
Yeah, it very possibly could have been a casualty of war.
Yeah, let me see. I'll do a quick little, boy, I'm loving this terminal. Look at this thing. Do a little, so if you search, it's called Toxic, but it might be like Toxic Dash. Yeah, it's, okay, so there is a... toxic-git is what the package is. And here, let me just download this real quick. I think I might, I think I might already have, I thought I had it installed. But it's, Oh, this is the problem. I got a new rig upstairs. I have stuff installed upstairs.
Oh, so you're mixing your.
But it's essentially an nCurse's Tox client. So you could, again, what I love about nCurse's clients is I could leave it in my Gwake drop-down terminal.
Right.
Oh, that's what it is it fails to build. That's
yeah,
why.
I've had that happen with a couple of.
I think, again, there might be, like you were saying, a downloadable binary.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the only way.
Some machines it works on for me. Toxic, it's Toxic. It's an nCurse's client. It even, in fact, this is why it's not building. It even supports, it's funny how it's all coming back to me now.
Right.
It supports audio from the command line. And if you, for whatever reason, on the Arch build, it doesn't declare that it needs those as dependencies. So if you don't have the audio stuff installed, it fails to build. But once you get the OpenAL and some of the other stuff it requires to build installed, it'll load up, and you'll have an nCurse's based Tox client that supports audio notifications and all that stuff. So you could leave it in a minimized terminal, and you'll still get a little jingle if you get a message.
So you're telling me I could have a voice conversation from my terminal? That is just hardcore.
I know, or just text chat, or it won't do images, but it's probably not
just the principle of running that terminal and doing a voice call. From it
especially when you're doing it from cool old term.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, if you could do it, I mean, that's like you've hit hipster kingdom.
I know, man. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
You might have to go on a detox after that.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So just a little heads up before we roll into the news. If you missed any of our OSCON interviews from the last couple episodes of Linux Unplugged and the Linux Action Show, I've put it all together in a playlist that we have linked in the show notes. All 8 videos there. And it's about an hour's worth of content, and you can just bust right through them.
Nice.
And this is also if you've seen them and you wanted to help us spread the word about these interviews, you could go and send these out to folks. That's one of the reasons I broke these out is we could use your help spreading the word. You know, if you wanted to like tweet the DeBona interview or the Simon St. Laurent, or if you're a Raspberry Pi fan and you thought that interview with Ruth about the Raspberry Pi B and Pidora was fascinating. It would really help us out if you shared the word about this on your favorite platform wherever you are obnoxious. You could help us.
Yep, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you're into. And the thing is you could even go hardcore and like do the whole playlist. That would be okay too.
That'd be okay too. That'd be okay too. I mean, I know you've got that G Plus feed you're never using.
Yeah. You might as well pump it with something, right?
I'm sorry, Google. That was deep. That would cut deep. I'm sorry, Google.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Ting is mobile that makes sense. Ting is my mobile service provider, and Matt's mobile service provider. I'm rocking an iPhone 5. Yeah, Ting sent me an iPhone 5, and I've been trying it out. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show, one of the reasons why I'm trying this out. And I'll tell you what, it's been a pretty smooth experience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's blasphemy.
I know. Well, it's really a testament not to the iPhone, but to Ting. Because of their dashboard, it's so easy for me to set up a new phone that it makes the concept of switching between phones totally painless. It's like it's a no entry barrier kind of thing, or no barrier to entry at all. And here's how you can get started. Go check them out, last.ting.com. That'll take $25 off any device you want to get. They've got so many great devices, like the Nexus 5. That's my primary daily driver is the Nexus 5 when I'm not cheating on the other side.
Well, and I think there's nothing wrong with actually seeing what the other guys got to give you. I mean, it's all in the great network.
Well,
who cares?
I'll get into a little bit in our interview with Frank.
All right.
They've got also LTE hotspots, and the great thing about Ting, the way they structure their plans, and if you think about it, how everybody should structure their plans, it's a flat $6 per month. That's all you pay, and then they just take your message, your minutes, your megabytes, they add them all up, whatever bucket you fall into, that's what you pay. So for me, like last month was like $34. Wow. This month might be a little more since I traveled to Portland, but you only pay for it when you use it. So you don't pay into some huge JARS contract that you're not going to get all the value out of. I use those minutes, I pay for them. And then there's no contract. There's no early termination fee. So if you ever do decide to change your mind, it's not a big deal. And what's great is Ting knows that you might be stuck in a carrier that just does it the old way. That's why they have an early termination relief program. You can find out more by going to ting.com/ETF. They'll give you up to $75 per line that you have to cancel in Ting credits. Now think about my bill. I currently have 3 phones on my bill, and my bill is barely going to break probably $40, $45. So if you got a $75 credit for every line you had to cancel. That might last you a few months on Ting.
Oh, yeah.
You can go experiment, too, because they have a savings calculator. When you go to last.ting.com, right there in the middle, you can check them out. And something we like to do here on the Linux Action Show is Ting's always looking for great apps that work great on Android. And Kyra this week is featuring OpenTable, which is an app I've heard about but never tried out. So let's see what Kyra from Ting has for us, Matt.
Tired of stressing over a last-minute reservation?
Yes.
I'm Kyra, and this is Ting's App of the Week.
Go Ting. Go Ting.
It's birthday.
OpenTable displays nearby restaurants so you can easily find something to eat and instantly book a reservation. With over 20,000 bookable restaurants and a great browsing interface, it's the most convenient way to pick a joint and reserve a spot. Once you launch OpenTable, you'll see a list of restaurants close to you and upcoming available reservations for each. Tap the icon in the top right to filter by distance, rating, costs, special offers, and more. Tap on a restaurant to view the location and learn more, such as the price range and dress code. You can also view full menus and read user reviews about the establishment. To book a table, first select your preferred date and party size.
Oh, dude, seriously. In the doghouse with the wife, there you go.
Yeah.
Tap an available time.
Or leaving from work.
Set.
Yes.
Just do that before you go. Meet the wife there.
You'll also receive an email with your reservation details inside.
Nice.
While you don't have to make an account, OpenTable has a reward system in which you receive dining reward points for every booking you make. After you hit a certain amount, you can redeem them for a check that can be used at most OpenTable restaurants. OpenTable is super useful and is entirely free. The next time your dining plans are left to the last minute, why not try it out? Make sure to subscribe to Ting for future videos, and thanks for watching.
That is super useful. I will check out OpenTable. Thanks, Kyra.
Yeah, that's great.
The other great thing about Ting is they have no-hold customer service. You can call them at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. business hours, and a real person answers your phone. But the best part is that real person is actually equipped to solve your problem.
That's right.
They'll call you back if they need to. They are empowered, and they are educated. They are Android enthusiasts themselves. So if you call them with a problem, they're going to be able to get you taken care of. Go over to last.ting.com to get started. I'll take $25 off your first month. If you got a device you can bring, they're going to give you a $25 credit. Last.ting.com. And a really big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
You know, I think back to what you were saying as far as like bringing over multiple phones for each line of credit. I mean, you really can. If you're just a casual family usage, I mean, you're getting quite a chunk of change.
The savings is going to be nuts. That's why you should check out the savings calculator just to kind of drive that point home. I think you'll be really surprised.
It's all about the usage, not about the bill.
Let's talk about OpenSUSE going rolling. That's our first news story this week. OpenSUSE Factory turns into a rolling release, and everybody's talking about this. Phoronix had one of the first write-ups, and OpenSUSE Factory will now still serve as the OpenSUSE development. It's going to take place in Factory, and it's going to aim for a distribution that is rolling, and it's tested and stable, fresh, bleeding edge every single day. Now, stable and fresh and bleeding edge, we'll see, but that's what they're going for.
That's a big promise.
We'll see if they can do it. And I think this is extremely exciting because we've been on Linux Unplugged discussing OpenSUSE quite a bit and kind of some of the things they might be able to do to sort of shake things up. This seems like one of them.
Definitely.
And here's a bit of the announcement. The OpenSUSE project today announced the development version of OpenSUSE, which is called Factory, has become an independent distribution using the rolling release development model. This means Factory is no longer just the development branch of OpenSUSE, the reliable, modern, easy-to-use, multi-purpose Linux operating system, but a tested and stable, fresh daily bleeding edge distribution. The new Factory model balances responsibility among packagers, testers, and end users, while putting more emphasis on automated quality assurance. As a result, OpenSUSE Factory becomes a reliable, always ready working distribution.
Nice.
Factory is critical as it provides the base technology for OpenSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise, which is used by tens of thousands of organizations around the world.
I'll tell you what, two things. Not only are they going in the right direction, but if they would just adopt that logo above as their new thing.
The beer one?
The drunk toad. I mean, dude, that's what's needed.
Matt.
Whatever. Toad, lizard, it's green, and he looks drunk. That's the important thing. And his eyes go different directions.
Yeah, let's be honest, that is the important thing.
That is the important thing. I mean, really, that's bleeding edge Toad right there. I mean, he's ready to rock and roll. Just look at him.
Does this change your? I know you're not an OpenSUSE daily driver.
I would try it based on that. It's because it sounds like a challenge.
It's a chameleon.
It's, yeah,
it's
yeah,
a chameleon.
It's chameleon.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's a
whatever.
chameleon. Sorry.
Green and he's blizzardy. Yeah. But anyway, the point being is that I think the direction they're going is interesting to me because they're trying something new. They're trying to kind of blend two worlds together that historically haven't blended well together in general.
This is a great point, and something I was wondering is, can a distribution? I mean, let's talk about we're going to talk about CRUX today, right?
Yep.
And now we're talking about SUSE. Two distributions that have an incredible legacy, a deep, rich culture and legacy that spans literally multiple countries. So the question is, what we're going to see demonstrated here is rolling release a technology, or is it a fundamental culture and philosophy?
Right.
And can an organization or a project or a group that for more than a decade has looked at releasing and developing software in a very specific kind of way, can that as a whole, as an entirety, can the group transition over to fundamentally a different way of developing software and planning distribution development?
Boy, that's a tough, and without actually trying it yet, that's tough for me to say, but I think that the potential is certainly there. I hope they do. There's a lot about SUSE I love, but there's some things that I want to see kind of evolve into its own. And this may be that differentiator that it needs to say, hey, look, we're doing something really wild.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Fedora project announced they recently had their big get-together, and there's a couple of things that came out of Fedora. This machine over here has got a test build of Fedora 21 not loaded at ATM, but it does have it on there, and I've been trying it out for a while. So a couple of things are coming up for the Fedora group. First of all, they announced a very focused security team, the Fedora security team. And here's what they're doing. The security team mission is to assist packagers in closing security holes. Surprise, surprise, right? Once alerted to a vulnerability on a package, the security team will help work with upstream to obtain a patch or a new release of a package. Once they've got the patch or new release, they'll attach the vulnerability bug and work with packagers to get it fixed, published immediately. Sort of grease this process. Because here's how we stand right now in Fedora. This is the existing problem. As of a few days ago, they had 566 open vulnerability tickets that cover both Fedora and the Enterprise Linux distribution. The breakdown of those bugs goes like this. 128 of these bugs are low priority. 366 of these bugs are moderate priority. 69 of these bugs are important, and 3 are critical. So the idea is you get a team on here that can help grease this a little bit to help fix this thing up. Now, I think this situation is actually already better since this article was published.
Right.
And so you might be thinking right now, wait a minute, are you telling me all of this time the security guy or the Fedora guys never had a security team?
That sounds scary. It's kind of like, wait, this being run by chimpanzees? What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on, right? Yeah. So that was a very common question that came up after this announcement. And so over on Spark's open source and security journal blog, one of the guys involved here, he said, no, it doesn't mean that Fedora has been insecure this entire time. In actuality, Fedora is actually in pretty good shape. But there's always room for improvement, so we're organizing a team to help facilitate that improvement. So the security team will help packagers. So they're still going to have people developing security fixes, backporting those things. This is a team to help packagers.
Okay, so they're not So what they're saying is they're not saying, "Hey, look, we've had no security stuff at all."
Right.
I mean, they have, but they're trying to I don't know, fine tune.
Right.
Okay.
And in fact, people have been asking, are you guys going to be auditing packages and stuff like that? And they say, no, that's a different team. There's the security SIG group. They're going to be doing that. We're not going in that direction. So they're pretty focused. You can see right now they're actually working on fixing some of those bugs as we speak.
That's good.
Also sort of Fedora related, it wouldn't be a Fedora release without a delay. Fedora 21 has been delayed by 3 weeks.
And I'm as much as I rip on them, I would say that the one thing I always defend them on is if you make it not suck.
Right.
And they're really good about this. They release it when it's ready. I'm okay with that. Looking at you.
Did you hear about we covered it on TechSnap this week. Did you hear about the RPM Fusion hoopla?
Yeah.
RPMfusion.org was defaced because it is essentially just an open wiki. So you go register, and then anyone who registers could change the wiki, including the download links to set up the RPM Fusion repos. And it looks like primarily the RPM Fusion guys responded by just reverting the wiki changes and not actually solving the fundamental problem.
Why would you do that? I mean, it's only got downloads and executables. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? That was stupid.
Pretty much everybody using Fedora on a desktop is using RPM Fusion. So if you compromise RPM Fusion, you would be compromising a repository that the vast majority of Fedora desktop users use. So it is a huge problem.
That is beyond a huge problem. That is the fact that they didn't actually address it would make me switch distros at that moment. Yeah. I would literally be like, honestly, oh my God, you really just did that.
I mean the really? Fedora guys would say, well, it's not an officially supported and sanctioned repository and blah, blah, blah.
No, that's fair. It's kind of like Automatics was for Ubuntu back in the day. Yeah. I mean, okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
So, okay. No, I think, but I would at least at the very minimum on their site make that comparison, because otherwise people are going to be reacting the way I just did.
And exactly. And something else that I'm keeping an eye on with Fedora, which looks like it could be Fedora's answer to the AUR. Have you looked at Copr at all? COPR?
No.
Yeah, I'll Google this right now.
Okay.
It looks kind of interesting. COPR, Fedora. And it's essentially like, you submit a package build script, and it allows you to sort of build like you would from the AUR stuff. Right. It's not as nearly like, for example, like good old terminal isn't in here and stuff like that. But this looks like, after some time, and I may have this wrong because I'm just starting to kind of loosely watch this as we near our Fedora 21 review.
Okay.
But essentially, it kind of looks like it is a user repository of package build scripts.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this could be eventually, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but after maybe a year or two, maybe this would replace RPM Fusion, potentially, maybe.
That might be a better thing.
Fedora users, let me know. I don't know if maybe I'm getting this wrong. Linux Action Show at jupiterbroadcasting.com. Let me know what's going on with that.
Definitely. Well, like I said, the other thing, as everyone's pointed out, and I addressed this pretty early on, yes, I know they're not directly responsible for the RPM Fusion thing, but it's kind of like saying, oh, hey, that AUR thing you Arch user guys like? Yeah, it's been compromised, but that's okay. It's not Arch's problem. It gets fuzzy, I don't know.
Producer Eric points out Copper's been around for a year. Yeah, I know. But it still seems like it's very early. Like, it doesn't seem like it has a very...
It just doesn't have that feeling it.
Well, no, it just doesn't have a very deep... it has a lot of packages, but not... it's not even, even in comparison.
The packages don't feel mature?
No, it's just, it doesn't even, the amount of package selection doesn't even compare to the AUR at this point. So that's the part that feels early. Like, essentially, I went in there and I looked for 3 core applications that I installed from the AUR immediately, and they weren't in there.
See, that bugged me.
So I just don't know what the story is there. It seems like I can't tell if it's not getting off the ground or if it's just a slow...
I've had the problem with RPM distros in general. I never find what I need. It's the closest thing that ever came close was like the OpenSUSE with their little package factory or whatever the hell it is. That was cool.
Yeah.
But even then it was kind of hit and miss.
So one of our favorite projects here on the show, XBMC, is going through some changes. It's maybe a midlife crisis? I don't know. What do you think, Matt? The XBMC project has announced they are changing their name to the Kodi Entertainment Center.
Right idea. Took too long. They needed to have done this a long time ago, because now you're going to have the backlash of, well, the brand recognition and that's true. I agree with that. There's a brand recognition issue, but I also see their point of saying, hey, by the way, Microsoft likes to sue people for walking in front of them, so probably don't even want to chance the whole X and B and whatever,
Yeah, there is that. And they kind of hint on that. They say, we're excited to announce the Media Center software we've all loved for so many years will have a new name starting with version 14 instead of XBMC 14. They're introducing Kodi 14.
That's one way to do it. And I mean, now, better late than never.
I suppose so, right?
Yeah, it needs to happen.
So it's actually been 6 years since they renamed from Xbox Media Center to just XBMC. Mm-hmm. That's probably when they should have done this main change.
Yeah.
But they say XBMC fits less now than it did even in 2008. The software barely runs on the original Xbox, and it's only because of some clever hacks. It never run on the 360 or the Xbox One. Furthermore, the software still acts as a media center, but it also has add-ons, games, streams, content from numerous devices. It ultimately acts as a replacement for whatever platform it is hosted on. XBMC today is far more of an entertainment center than a simple media center. Beyond the nonsensical nature of the software name, there's the secondary issue because XBMC was originally based on the name Xbox. Developers of the software have never had any sort of, that's them, any legal control over the use of the name, which has resulted in problems. They've had a lot of confusion over the name. They talk about that. They've had people that go off and make hardware boxes and use the XBMC name, and they have no repercussions to make it look like it's not an official thing.
Right.
They say the average user will see really little difference from the new name. Software is going to remain the same. Users will keep going to get it like they always have. The code's going to remain under the GPL2. You're going to keep the current numbering scheme. The only difference will be a new splash screen, and it's your last chance to get an XBMC old school retro hipster
We'll
shirt.
see, there's an opportunity for a shirt right there, and a collector's item at that. But I think the bigger issue is that as long as it doesn't break a repository, it doesn't break plugins and extensions, and it doesn't interfere with the user experience, who the hell cares? I mean, really, that's my end philosophy.
I don't love the name, but I also think maybe this is coming from a little Plex competition.
Oh, yeah.
PLEXKODI. I don't know.
And the difference there, for those that aren't familiar, is Plex is kind of like Ubuntu, where XBMC is more like Debian. It's kind of like one has more control under the hood. One feels a little more hands-on.
So
I don't know.
It's funny because XBMC and now Kodi to me seems like it's reached. My buddy John. I was just hanging out with my buddy John last night, and he was telling me about how he managed to hack his Apple TV to get XBMC on it. And the spousal approval factor, he says, is through the roof. Like, the whole family is loving XBMC. And, John's a very smart guy. He's technically capable, but he's not a Linux user. He's not overly savvy on this kind of stuff. And he's still getting XBMC going. The thing is XBMC, to me, is like, it's almost professional grade. Like, I could see selling somebody a nice entertainment system powered by XBMC, and the name Kodi sounds like a little child's name.
It sounds like Damien or something. It's
the little Jimmy Media Center.
Right, like Fisher Price. I know, I definitely see that, but I think at the end of the day, too, it's like you were talking about with the Apple TV. I had one of those. I had an Apple TV 2. I jailbroke it, SSH2 into it. These are things that, while are doable, and if you're kind of a hobbyist, you don't have to be super technically savvy, but there's a certain amount of instructions to be read. Versus just a Plex box like a NAS that you go bink and I'm done.
So I think I think the name Kodi is trying to make it a little more approachable, trying to make it sound a little more consumer friendly.
But it sounds like something Leapfrog put out. Really, it does. It sounds like one of the Leap pads or something. It just sounds like something that would be addressed toward children. Yeah. And I don't know. But again,
what do you think of the look of it? I don't even know if I like.
Oh, the look is horrible. For one thing, it screams Saw to me. It just kind of has that I like Comic Sans feel to it. I don't know.
I don't mean to harp on the name thing so much. At the end of the day, even if we don't love the name, we love the project.
Love the project all day long.
So it's a great project at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter. Yep. All right, enough Kodi. Are we ready to talk about ownCloud, Matt?
ownCloud.
Now, last week we told you about the announcement and release of ownCloud 7. Well, this week, not only did I get a chance to install it on a DigitalOcean droplet and kick it around, but Frank, the founder and maintainer of ownCloud, Frank's been working on ownCloud since 2010. He started it at a Camp KDE keynote in San Diego, and he's joined us today on the Linux Action Show to talk about ownCloud 7. It's really exciting, Frank. Thanks so much for joining us. Good morning. Or good afternoon, I guess, as it is.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Welcome. First of all, I guess first things first, welcome to the U.S. How long have you been in the States now?
I actually moved to Boston 6 weeks ago now.
Well, welcome. And so not only have you been busy moving, but you guys have been busy working on ownCloud 7. Now, we had a bunch of questions sent in by the audience, but I had a couple of questions for you off the start. So folks that might not have seen your interview on the show before, could you just really quickly recap who you are, very briefly, what the ownCloud project is, and then we'll get right into 7.0.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm a developer and open source guy for a long time, since the end of the 90s, so really long time ago. It's scary.
Yeah.
I was involved in KDE desktop for a lot of years, did a lot of work in different areas, marketing, events, and website and social networking integration, was a board member for a while. So I did lots of different Linux and KDE stuff before. And as part of that, also I announced the ownCloud project, 2010, as you said, during a conference in San Diego here in the US. So, and this was basically the start of the project. And I'm the maintainer and project leader since then.
So version 7 came out last week, and I know for me, the feature I'm the most excited about is the server-to-server sync. But in 7.0, what are you most excited about? What's the feature that you're telling everybody about?
Well, from a feature perspective, I totally agree. Server-to-server is the thing, because it's very important for the community, because this finally basically implements a feature that shows the potential to have a really federated and distributed cloud storage. because you run ownCloud on your device at home and you're in your company, your university, and use it for yourself and share it with others. But it was like this isolated thing, right? We had public sharing links and you can create user accounts for your friends and family, but it was still your own little small world. And server-to-server sharing is basically being able to connect all these ownCloud installations all over. So this is for me specifically very, very exciting, because this is like an idea or vision that existed since the start. It's now finally implemented.
I love it from a backup standpoint. I love it from just an availability standpoint. From a production standpoint, we have production clips that I'm moving into ownCloud, and so we need, since they're such large files, we need them locally. So that server-to-server sync is going to be really handy. How does that work? Like, how fast is that? Is it near real time? Is it using rsync on the back end? Is it or something magical? What's going on there?
Yeah, we're still working on the magical part. So far, it's not so magical, but still works great, but without magic. No, it works in a way that perhaps I should describe a little bit how it works from a user perspective.
I'd love that, yeah.
It's not so obvious, because no one else has this at the moment, as far as I know.
No.
It's not really clear what this really means. So the idea is that I have my own cloud, you have your own cloud, and we want to collaborate. We want to have it like a shared folder, and we want to work together on some files and share them and exchange them. Just work together on the files. And so what exists so far was I can create a user account for you, and you can log into my own cloud, and then you have to log out again and log into your own cloud. That's the pain in the butt. That's not great. And the other alternative would be to create a sharing link for you.
Yeah.
And I send you the link, and then you can do all the stuff, but you have to do this in the browser. The browser pops up, and you can upload and download files, and it's already good. But it's not really integrated into your desktop. You can't do this from your desktop, basically. And the new server-to-server sharing works in a way that the link that I sent you can basically put this into your own cloud, and then it's like mounted. So which means there's a folder which exists on my own cloud and on your own cloud. And all the stuff that I upload on my side appears on your side, and the other way around. And this is then very powerful if we, for example, both use our desktop syncing clients. So I have just a folder here on my desktop, and I can just edit my files with my normal word processors, put files into the folder, drag them out, and so on. And basically directly appears on your side too, on your desktop.
The key part here that's really fascinating to me is how we could also, since it's syncing to the ownCloud server, it syncs over the desktop client. Is this essentially an extension of the ownCloud external storage support? And it's just
yes, exactly. Yeah. Technically it is. So it's basically mounting your own cloud into my own cloud, or the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's not from an admin perspective where the full server is mounted. It's from a user perspective. And also only a specific shared folder, obviously not your complete own cloud, that's your files and your folders. But I can basically mount one specific folder that you share with me into my own cloud. From a user perspective, you don't see this. It's totally transparent, happens in the background. It's just a folder that's there magically.
So it sounds like collaboration and sharing is obviously pretty key. How does that translate into the editing space? I know you guys have been working on collaborative editing inside ownCloud, almost sort of Google Doc style. Where's that at now?
Yeah, so ownCloud Documents, the name of the feature, we launched that with ownCloud 6 end of last year. So this was like collaborative editing in the browser, basically compared to Google Docs. There are obviously few improvements for ownCloud 7. So one of it that we can work with Microsoft Word files now. We can convert them into the right format and convert them back transparently. Again, this all happens in the background, so the user don't really have to care about file formats. It just works. Another thing I want to mention here is, because this also works great together with the server-to-server sharing feature that we talked about. Again, so basically, if I share a folder with you, you can also do this collaborative editing on files that are physically stored on my own cloud. But it all connects together in a nice way.
I also noticed there's some support for just like I have like a plain text document in my files folder that happens to be that ends in the .md extension for Markdown. However, I'm able to even pull it up inside my ownCloud 7 installation here, and I don't know how this worked out, but there is also even some level of syntax highlighting for the Markdown in the ownCloud viewer here. Tell me a little bit about this, because this is just a text file.
That's just a text file. Yeah, we have integration for the ACE editor. ACE is a nice JavaScript text editor component that we integrated. Actually, this feature exists really since ownCloud 2, I think. Of course, it's constantly improved now with new text highlighting support, Markdown, as you said. So that's like just a very convenient way to work with.
Any possibility of collaborative editing coming to these types of files too?
Not at the moment.
Yeah.
We actually thought about it. I'm interested in your opinion, because the thing is that these are text files.
Yeah.
And my experience is that like normal consumers, normal users out there, they don't really work that much with text files. They like to work with rich text like Word files or OpenOffice documents.
I agree for regular users. Yeah.
So,
to me, it seems more, but I could see developers and technical shops that might like it for text notes and stuff.
Or collaborative coding. I mean, this would be interesting. But
I mean, we would use it from a production standpoint for collaborative show planning. And I could see from a IT documentation standpoint, having an ownCloud server for an IT department and using it for collaborative documentation of IT services and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool feature, and I wanted to kind of transition to something that people are aware of, but maybe are not. When they think of ownCloud, they don't think of the fact that there is actually now a pretty robust desktop component to this, and you touched on it a little bit, but how do you manage, Frank? Because to me, it seems like these are almost totally two separate projects in a sense. It seems like you could have a project that is totally dedicated to creating the most perfect desktop sync client and a project that's totally dedicated to making the web end of this. How do you balance those two priorities? And do you see the desktop client as essentially feature complete, or is there more that needs to be done there?
First of all, that's a very good point, actually, because what ownCloud tries to do is to create like the complete user experience for the users. So ownCloud is not like a server component. ownCloud is everything together. ownCloud, there's the desktop syncing client, as you just mentioned. There's also the mobile clients for Android and for iOS. The web interface. So that's all together is basically the full user experience that we want to give our users. And an essential part of that is the desktop syncing client. Technically, it might look like a separate project somehow, because it's a totally different code base. It's desktop software, right? It's C++ and written in Qt, and it's from a technology standpoint really different than the server. And this is different than the Java code on Android and so on. But from a user perspective, this is one big story. So it's all basically fits together. It's very important. But your question was about the priorities on the desktop client. That's actually a very good point. We are working at the moment on a feature. This is like, I don't know, I think one of the top 3 most requested features for the desktop clients ever, which are overlay icons for the file manager.
To this, like the sync status?
Right.
Yes. So you can, in your file manager, you can see with small overlay icons if this is synced or not, if it's a shared folder or not, or is it your own folder, and so on. So just some nice indications.
One area I was wondering, I think where I was going at is, I was provided an iPhone 5 from my sponsor, Ting. And one of the goals that I wanted to try to get to with ownCloud 7 is I wanted to remove all third-party sync services, no Google, no iCloud. And I set up an ownCloud 7 instance on a DigitalOcean droplet, and within about 30 minutes, I had replaced all third-party sync services, and I had tied in my calendar, my tasks, my contacts, everything to my ownCloud 7 instance. However, I had to do all that manually. It would be really cool, like, for example, if I could launch an app and say, do this for me, or on the desktop, if I could automatically configure Thunderbird or Evolution through the ownCloud client to connect those services too, because there seems like the calendar and the contacts, an incredible feature of ownCloud that gives you your own mobile cloud syncing, but it's sort of so disconnected from any desktop software that it seems maybe beyond what average users would be able to configure to utilize properly.
Yes.
So is that an area? I mean, because that's where I'm getting from the conflicting priorities. Because I could see users could almost just demand more and more features from this client constantly. Is that a problem?
Yeah. It's. I mean, the configuration. It's a very good point. The configuration has to be as easy as possible for the users. And for iOS, because you mentioned the iPhone, is I'm not really sure if an app like
might not be able to
app can be able to change the configuration of the calendar.
But perhaps on Android.
And Android would be possible, yeah. We already did parts of that because we are hooking into the central configuration framework there. So in the future, we might be able to also provide some pre-configured configuration for the calendar.
Very nice.
There's a problem with the APIs at the moment with Android because Android out of the box doesn't support WebDAV, CalDAV and CardDAV.
Oh, okay.
So there's some work to be done. For platforms that are actually very open and more open source friendly and community oriented, like GNOME, like the GNOME desktop, we work together with the GNOME people in a great way. So in the GNOME, they have this web accounts thingy. If you launch your GNOME desktop, you get a nice window where you ask, okay, which services do you want to use on the internet? And you can select ownCloud. And if you do that, then it automatically configures exactly as you said, your calendar and your contacts and your WebDAV and so on. So this is the experience I want to see.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to set that up right now.
That sounds really awesome. I got to be honest. That's really cool.
Yeah, that level of integration with the desktop is exactly what I'm talking about. That's incredible, Frank.
Yes. Yeah, that's how it should be. We have to see what other platforms support there, but this is how it should be. Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well, I know we're going kind of long. We have a couple more questions if you're okay with this.
Sure.
The audience sent these in. So Sleepy asks, are there any plans for better auditing on who shared files? He's been deploying ownCloud in an enterprise with some success, and management's loving it, but they've been asking about questions of being able to see who's sharing files with who, and etc.
There are some features in this area. I think we have to mention here is that ownCloud is not only an open source project and a community project, because there's also the ownCloud company. So we also founded a startup around ownCloud. And as a company, we offer ownCloud Enterprise Edition, which is an optimized thing that actually provides these features. So we have an auditing feature in there where an admin can see who shares with what. There's sometimes legal requirements to do that. Okay. And that's available in the enterprise version. That's at the moment not in the community version because it's really...
But Sleepy's at it in an enterprise, so that might be the perfect solution for him. Seal20 asks, he says, I could not find any way to replace my last evil tool, as he calls it, because it's closed source. And I'm wondering, you probably hear this a lot, Frank, Evernote. He loves Seal20 loves Evernote. He's tried all the alternatives, but at the end of the day, he loves the fact that, he can take notes on his smartphone, take pictures, have it sync back to a central service. Are notes something you guys are talking about?
Yes, it actually already exists. There's a third-party app called Notes, exactly as you said, and this is an app that you have to install on your own cloud server, and then you have a nice web interface where you can edit your notes. And there are also Android and iOS components available, like apps that you can also use to access your notes. To be fair, this is only text notes at the moment. I think Evernote also supports video and audio and photo notes. This doesn't exist at the moment. But just to share notes between all your devices, I personally use that. I'm always creating notes, text files, writing down stuff all the time. So this is a feature that's actually already there. You
brought up one of my next questions. This is something I'm not super familiar with, but it looks really exciting, is apps for ownCloud. And in fact, there's even an apps.owncloud.com site that folks can check out to see some of the apps available. One of the ones I installed was a task app, a task management application into my ownCloud instance. What's going on here with apps? And is this something that maybe eventually, am I going to see an app store type browser in my ownCloud instance? What's going on here?
Absolutely. So my view about this cloud space and how it probably the future of that area is that there's a huge need for apps, for extensions, for additional functionality that work with your data, because ownCloud can synchronize and share all your data over all your different devices. But at the end of the day, you want to do something with the files. And the Notes app is just a great example. You have native editing for your notes. And because of that, we integrated this apps concept into ownCloud, where you can, it's like plugins or extensions, but it's more than that. They can provide a full new user experience for some specific data that you want to manage with your ownCloud. So there's an RSS reader, for example, available for ownCloud. There's like a movie player, movie streaming app available.
Yeah.
And because of that, we have these extensions. Apps ownCloud.com, you can, I don't know, you have, I think, over 50 extensions already published by some community people there. Oh, wow. And some of them that are actually reviewed also from a security perspective can be enabled directly from inside the ownCloud web interface. You can click on enable, and it's automatically downloaded from the App Store and installed.
Oh, nice.
Okay. And it's familiar. Anybody that's familiar with like the KDE Look type sites, you'll recognize the layout. There's even some casual games, which is
that's awesome.
This is funny. I saw this yesterday. This is like, I think there's a tic-tac-toe game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if I...
There's all kinds of stuff. That's just a funny example.
All
right, I've got two last questions for you, Frank, before we let you go. One is going to be a question I've asked you before, but we've got one last kind of conflict question for you. The audience has noted, a few people wrote this, and they wonder if you're going to run into a conflict of trying to satiate the needs of the enterprise, like our auditing question was an example of that, versus satiate the needs of end users, like photo library management, shared family calendars, photo syncing to the phone. Seems like potentially two conflicting sides that each want their own things, and they want them really bad. Where do you see maybe ownCloud focusing a little more on the enterprise for a couple of years to sort of set a foundation up and then branching out, or what's your plan of attack there?
Sounds strange, but I don't see a huge conflict here. I mean, what we want to do as a core team in ownCloud, with the core team, I mean some people that work for our company, but also some core community people. We want to work on a really, really stable foundation of syncing and sharing files and calendars and contacts and so on, like basically having the basic foundation there. And then all the crazy additional features on top of that, as you mentioned, like gallery, photo management and stuff like that. I mean, this can be done as these apps that we just discussed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything that's missing can be done by everybody.
What about core features like you've got to have had a ton of requests for email, right? I mean, like some sort of a centralized, because you're so close with calendars and contacts. It seems like you add mail. Now, I know there's like a Roundcube app, which you could add to an ownCloud instance. Mm-hmm. Have you guys thought about internalizing that functionality, though? No, so it sounds like it could be a lot of work. So
internalizing in a way to put it into the ownCloud core, no problem.
Yeah.
But there are different, I think there are several third-party solutions already, like Roundcube is one of them, but there are more to integrate other web interfaces into ownCloud. And I also know that some guys are working on a native web interface for ownCloud that might be out in a few weeks. So there are different options there. This most likely won't be in the ownCloud core because we don't want to overload it with features, but as an app, as a plugin that can be enabled for someone who needs it, absolutely.
Okay, my last question, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer it. I kind of felt like maybe there was a hint towards this. Is there anything hardware-related for ownCloud in the future? Like, I'm thinking you've seen maybe those transporter devices that are like a home version of Dropbox, or something like an ownCloud phone that's maybe based on Firefox OS that pre-ships.
An ownCloud phone,
Yeah, right? Maybe it's got ownCloud branding and it's all synced up and connected to an ownCloud instance right out of the box. Anything hardware-related in ownCloud in the works?
Well, I think that one of the strengths of ownCloud is that it's free software and you can use it wherever you want. So I'm not sure, actually I'm quite sure that we don't build our own hardware because it already runs on a ton of different routers and Nest devices and Raspberry Pis and whatever. There's no need to limit ourselves to one thing. Yeah. If someone would come to us and want to partner with us and say, look, I have this device and I want to put ownCloud on it and like brand it as official ownCloud box. Whatever.
They focus on the hardware. You focus on the software.
Let's do this as a partnership. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
But we as ownCloud, we want to be generic. We want to run everywhere.
I like it. Well, Frank, if people want to check out ownCloud, do you have like a favorite way you tell people to jump in and start trying it? I mean, I did it on a droplet on DigitalOcean. It was super quick. Is there a way when people say, hey, Frank, how can I get started with ownCloud right now? Where do you tell them to go? What do you tell them to do?
Well, there are lots of different ways. I mean, depends on if you want to host it yourself. If you want to host it yourself, you can just go to ownCloud.org/install, and there are different ways to install it on different ways and different operating systems.
Yeah.
If you want to just first try it on a provider, then you can also go to ownCloud.org/providers, and there's a list of, 20, 30 companies that already offer ownCloud hosting, and just pick one and then just try it.
That's good to know. All right, Frank. Well, anything else you want to touch on before we let you run?
There's one more thing I want to mention.
Yeah, please do.
I'm really excited that this year, for the first time, we are doing our first ownCloud contributor conference.
Oh, yeah.
So a real conference where everybody wants to work on ownCloud, collaborate, meet the people, and has some crazy ideas, wants to help in any area. We do the first conference now. It's really exciting for me to have our conference.
That is exciting. When is it?
It is actually in August, like really soon, in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
It's in Berlin, in Germany.
You just moved over here.
yeah, I have to fly back. Bad planning, I guess. No, it's if you can go to ownCloud.org/conf. There's a website where you can see all the information. It's for free, of course. If you want to come, just sign up and join the team. We already have, I think, over 90 people signed up. So basically all the core people will be there, and lots of new people too. There will be workshops and lightning talks and so on. So if you want to help, if you're interested in ownCloud, then join us.
Very good. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, too, so folks can find that just by going and finding this episode. Frank, thanks so much for coming on the show, and keep up the awesome work.
It's a pleasure.
I have been enjoying the ownCloud 7 instance, so thanks so much for all the hard work to everybody on the ownCloud team and to yourself. And
thanks a lot.
Good luck with the conference.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks
all right.
for stopping by.
Thanks, Frank. All right, Matt.
Bye.
That's all the news for this week. We're about to review CRUX Linux, a distribution that has been around for a long time, my friends, with an incredible legacy. We're going to tell you all about that. But first, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System76, over at System76.com, where they are creating machines born to run Ubuntu, born to support Linux. Even down this morning, I was watching our chat room, and they were talking about, I'm having BIOS problems, or I'm having this problem with my machine. I still see people that have problems with Wi-Fi, and
Wow.
I know. System76.com. Really, just stop fighting with the hardware. Start playing with your Linux, and it's never, ever, ever been a better time, because they're kicking off a substantial computer sale. If you need a laptop or a high-powered desktop, there's an affordable solution at System76.com, because their back-to-school special has started this week. Save up to $100 on every System76 laptop and desktop. You got, by the way, not just like slouch systems either. They've got MSATA SSDs. They've got savings on i7 CPU upgrades, free wireless upgrades so you can get the really fancy smancy wireless cards, Logitech keyboard and mouse combos with select desktops, crucial SSDs and memory upgrades. Seriously, a desktop, a laptop. If Linux is going to be your primary platform, System76.com. If you want a trouble-free experience, System76.com. If you want a laptop or a desktop that after every release of that distro, for as long as you want to use that machine, it's going to work, System76.com. Go check them out and tell them the Linux Action Show sent you when you buy one, System76.com. And a big thanks to them for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Absolutely. Actually, I heard from someone here recently was saying you weren't kidding about that legacy support. They had an older version of one of their laptops. They thought there's no way they're going to support me in the forums on this. And they did. They got the problem solved. They were good to go. I'm
showing the Kudu Professional right here, which has been a really popular laptop model amongst our audience. I've heard from a lot of folks who are rocking the Kudu because it's got the balance of it's got that big screen. It's got that nice keyboard. It's a 15-inch screen, but it still has the numlock, which if you're in IT, it's 17.3. If you're in IT and you are doing a lot of IP addresses and stuff like that, having the numlocks having the number pad is really handy.
Oh, it's a must. Really.
You know, because I know when I was entering IP addresses constantly, I was so thankful to have that on my machine. Plus, the CUDA is just built really well, too. System76.com. Go check them out.
That's right.
A good hardware to run a distribution like CRUX on, too, Matt.
This is true.
So let's talk a little bit about CRUX Linux. And as it happens to be, CRUX Linux is celebrating a release on the 17th of July last month. They released version 3.1 of the CRUX Linux. So let's talk a little bit about this distro. You've probably heard the name a lot, but I don't know if you've ever checked it out. It's a lightweight distribution for the Intel architecture targeted at experienced users. And I want to underline that part right there. It's definitely targeted at pro Linux users. The primary focus of the distribution is really to keep it simple. It's reflected in a straightforward tar.gz package-based system, BSD style and init scripts, and a relatively small selection of hand-picked trimmed packages. I would say their secondary focus is the utilization of some new Linux features, not all, like there's not systemd in here, for example. And something else very unique about CRUX is it has a ports system, kind of like BSD.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it makes it easy to install certain applications. So here's the Linux Action Show's guide if you should use CRUX. And if you don't fall into any of those categories, don't use CRUX. Yeah. A somewhat experienced Linux user who wants a clean, solid distribution to play with. Or a person who prefers editing config files with an editor instead of as opposed to a GUI. You hate yourself a GUI? CRUX is for you.
This is true.
Someone who does not hesitate to download and compile programs from source code? CRUX is for you. CRUX started in May of 2000. They didn't have any public releases until about 2002. What's amazing, though, Matt, is by 2002, they had a community that was so strong. And think about in 2002 for a Linux distribution. This is kind of unique. Their community was so strong, so passionate, that they came together and worked at adding special package management features, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit.
As a community. That's pretty impressive.
And now it's been adopted by the distribution as its official way to install software. It's been tracked by DistroWatch since January 14th of 2002.
Right.
And, of course, because of its legacy and its age, you might have guessed this, but just to put it on the official record, CRUX is built from scratch. It is not based on any other distribution.
Now, that's a big component that people really got to soak in for a little bit, because so much of what we use these days, we take for granted about the fact that it's been built off of something. Built from scratch is a big deal.
Yeah, it's unique. That means it has its own heritage, its own history there. And so I think if chat room's already, it's funny. It's funny. I knew right when we got to this point. People are always like, well, this kind of sounds a lot like Arch. What's the difference between CRUX and Arch here? And I think our audience is probably more familiar with Arch. So before creating Arch, actually, Judd Vincent, one of the original creators of Arch Linux, admired and used CRUX himself. He's a minimalist. He's a minimalist. He liked the minimalist aspects of CRUX. So he was inspired by some of the original common ideas. So Arch was built from scratch itself, but essentially he's like, well, I love what CRUX is about. I want to add Pac-Man to it. There's some philosophies from BSD I want to adopt. So CRUX in a lot of ways inspired Arch Linux.
Interesting.
So if you're an Arch user, you kind of have a little debt of gratitude you owe to CRUX. Arch and CRUX share some guiding principles. For instance, both are architecture optimized for Intel, but there are other versions available for like ARM. Right. And both really, really sort of promote that KISS principle to keep it simple, stupid, as simple as possible. And both ship with kind of a ports-like system. You could argue the AUR is kind of a ports-like system.
Yeah, it definitely feels more porty.
And Arch is a rolling release with a lot more packages. CRUX provides a more slimmed down installation, and then you have ports outside the base system, and CRUX has stable releases, like the 3.1, which was just released on July. So CRUX 3.1 comes with Linux kernel 3.12.24 and Xorg 7.7, and your CRUX install is extremely minimal. Here's the screenshots from my install.
Okay.
So when you install CRUX, it's all from scratch. You go in with fdisk, you partition your drive, you boot from a boot ISO that's about 400 megabytes. Then you create your partitions. You then can utilize a setup script that lets you set up a chroot. So you go mount your new file system that you just created, and then you run a setup chroot, and it does a chroot into your new CRUX blank environment, and then you can run a setup script. And this setup script says, okay, well, where did you mount your new file system at? You tell that setup script where it's at. And then you go in there and say, okay, install these packages, core, optional packages, and in my case, Xorg. It goes through and dumps all that stuff onto the file system. And then when you're done, you jump into your chroot, and you go in and you have to edit a lot of your things by hand. There's no file system mount set up by default. You go in. They have an FS tab file that you go edit. They have examples in there, so you can just go in there and like. So here's an example if you chose Riser FS. Here's an example if you chose Extended 3. Here's an example if you chose et cetera, et cetera. So I chose Extended 4. So I went and uncommented the Extended 4. I added my device location, dev SDA1, and I added my swap down here. So I set up a dev SDA2 for swap. Go in there, uncomment those, add my specific device identifiers in there, save that out. Then you go build a kernel.
Oh my God!
So
I can see the weekend.
You make menu config. You go in and select all your kernel drivers you want. So make sure and they have like the minimal. You're going to want to have your SATA support, your Ethernet support, things like that turned on. Good chance it'll be pre-selected for you, but you want to double check and go in there and you select that. This is, if you're not familiar, this is make menu config. After you do that, you drop out and you make all, and you also do your module install. Then you copy over your kernel image to your /boot directory. And then you go manually edit your lilo.conf file. You point it at your new kernel image. You point it at your root device. Then you install the Lilo bootloader into the master boot record of your hard drive. And you reboot. And once you reboot, after you do all of those things, you are in your brand new CRUX install. So here's CRUX right here. That's very minimal install, as you'd probably suggest. And I think the first thing we probably want to go look at is /user/ports. And this is the ports tree, quote unquote. And if you go into op, this is where some of the best stuff is at. And you can see just like you would get in BSD.
Oh, yes, right.
I could go into one of these folders. Let's say I wanted to build PHP. I would go into the PHP folder here. And inside the PHP folder is a package file. Well, if we look at this package file, just kind of like on Arch, it's essentially a script that tells the package manager, here's where stuff goes, here's what's dependent, here's what you need. And then you use CRUX commands, and I've got all of the CRUX package commands listed out. So you have package utils, which is the set of CRUX package utilities. All package files for CRUX come in tar.gz files, and they're just straight up tar.gz files. When a package installed the package add, a new record is added to a database that's stored in var lib package db, and that's it. That's the package management for CRUX. It's super basic, no dependency checking, unless you use an additional tool called PRT-Git, which is this is the tool the community developed, I mentioned back in 2002, that also then handles dependency checking and things like that.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, this is definitely, and that was kind of my experience with it when I was, when I was trying it. It was just like this is pretty hardcore.
Yeah, it is.
This is quite hardcore.
Yeah, the port system. So just, if you're not familiar with like the way BSD does it, and this is a little different. It refers to a remote repository containing ports and client programs capable of downloading ports from the repository. So the ports utilities use rsync and HTTP up to download and do the synchronization. The port directories themselves don't actually contain any code in them. They just have the descriptor files like you're looking at right here on the screen. And a port directory can contain patches or other things. So like if you always applied a certain patch to VLC, you could have that in there. And when you build your VLC package, it always gets your patches. You could also do certain compiler optimizations for whatever might be on your system. Maybe you have, special video decoding support you could throw in there. All of that stuff that you get when you're building from source becomes available to you. And the port system makes it really sort of sustainable.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that is it. It's all powered by package files, and you start with this base install, and you create what you want from there. And at the end of it, because you've built your own kernel, because you've partitioned by hand, you really truly feel like it's your Linux.
Oh, in the most true, in the truest sense of the word, it is you Linux. I mean, literally.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
and it's fun from like a project standpoint. And here's what I said to the pre-show: here's who CRUX is for in my mind. If you take like everybody hates car analogies, but it works the best. Like there are people who like to have a car and they pull it into their garage, they put it up on blocks, they change out components. Sure. They make tweaks, they put it down, they go out and take it for a drive. I would say that's a CRUX user. For me, I'm somebody who 10 years ago, I used to take apart my car all the time and put it back together and take it out for a drive. Now, I like having the option of maybe replacing the exhaust system if I want to, but I probably do that once or twice a year. And instead, I much prefer to take it to a mechanic and have him do the work.
Exactly.
So CRUX, in this analogy, is not for me. Arch is a little, it's funny, Arch is less hardcore than CRUX.
Which is saying something, yeah.
It manages to meet that sweet spot for me. However, I could see, if you're somebody who has a little extra time on your hands, you really want to get nitty-gritty, you really want to learn Linux, CRUX could be a good way to do that. It's got some good documentation. Some of it's a little out of date. Some of it's not. And I think it could be a good distro for you if you're that kind of person.
And I think if you get stuck on the documentation, you can hit the forums if need be. You can do so. I mean, you can get help if you need to. You can.
Tennessee Frank in the chat room says that we're actually okay. It is we're clear to use car analogies. He's a car guy.
Oh, well, good to know.
So we are clear from that. We will have a Q&A with one of the developers from CRUX in Linux Unplugged on Tuesday. So we're also doing a community review of CRUX in Linux Unplugged. So we've set it up for you. We've given you the grand concept of CRUX, what it's about, and the history. Now in Linux Unplugged, we're going to do a community review. You'll get a roundtable take on using CRUX.
Right.
We've had folks using it for about a week. And we'll have one of the developers on from CRUX to answer your questions. We have a link in the show notes to a subreddit thread you can go ask your questions in for the CRUX developers. Yeah. So go in there, ask your questions, and on Tuesday's Linux Unplugged, we'll do a deep dive. We'll get multiple takes on using the distribution. We'll talk to the dev. I think it's going to be a great show. And that'll be on, I think that's going to be episode 52.
52.
Of Linux Unplugged. So you guys can check that out. All right, Matt, that's the Linux Action Show's look at CRUX Linux. But don't call it CRUX Linux. It's just CRUX. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. Yes. But hey, Matt, before we get out of here,
all right,
we got some emails. First one came in from Daniel. He says, hello, Chris and Matt. Well, hello, Daniel.
Hello.
Congrats on the show. Just some info about those soccer robots you talked about last week. Get ready for this. And this is a little scary. They're fully autonomous. Each one of them has their own quote-unquote brain, and each one of them runs Linux.
Oh, my God.
At the top of each robot is a hyperbolic mirror with a camera that allows it to see in 360 degrees. Okay, wow. Enabling it to see its teammates, the opponents, the ball, and its position in the field. Based on that, it decides what to do next. No remote control is required or even allowed. He includes more info in this email if you guys want to check it out.
I'm both impressed and fascinated and scared.
Yes.
Mostly.
All right, Gabriel writes in with a tough one. Which is interesting coming off our CRUX discussion. He says, hi, Chris and Matt. I switched to Linux in February of 2013, so I'm kind of a newcomer. My Linux experience is mainly Debian and Ubuntu, and I'm just running my first Arch installation. Here's a long story made short, which then look at this is more long. But we're not making all that. So I've simulated my workspace notebook running tools on Debian Wheezy and on Arch Linux, both with Mate. Here's what he's noticed. Debian has a more commercial OS-grade stability reputation and a conservative approach to updates. Arch grants a high level of configurability, bleeding-edge software, rolling release model. In theory, an IT manager can identify groups of users, decline configuration for each group, install once, update over time. Mate is light, in my opinion, and very simple for the user. My questions are, is it possible to run a reliable Arch production workstation in your opinion? And what are the recipes for keeping it safe if it is? What do you think, Matt?
Oh, because that's so me. So whether you're using Arch proper or you're using like one of the various derivatives that are based on Arch or have Arch elements.
Enteragos.
Yes, that as well.
Manjaro.
Regardless of which one you choose. Chaka-laka boom. I think at the end of the day, first and foremost, home directory is your baby. Take care of that. Make sure it's backed up. That's the big thing. Also, be wary of the packages you're upgrading. A lot of times we tend to wait, at least myself, I'll tend to wait 2 or 3 weeks out. I go to update and it's like 50 billion of them. Make real sure that you have a package cache of any potential problems. Also check the blog, kind of make sure that you're up to date on any surprises that might come along. If it's Arch, you check the Arch blog.
I might echo too. Wimpy in the chat room is saying, don't dip into the AUR that much because the packages, the packages in the official repos are maintained by the distro.
Right.
The ones in the AUR might be a little more hit and miss.
But here's the rub. You're not using Arch without the AUR. If you are, then I can't even. No. It's kind of like
I've got almost 400 packages installed.
It's kind of like the cord cutter. It says, "Oh, I never do that one thing." No, they do. Yeah. So
I look at it this way. Here's my way to keep Arch fresh. I would say stay out of the AUR as much as you can.
That's it. Yeah.
But also, I think maybe the secret sauce to Arch is update often. On my main Arch workstation upstairs, I update daily. I probably update twice a week here on the Bonobes. And like Matt is saying, with the rollback and stuff like that, you can always kind of recover. I think if you let too much time pass, that's where Arch can get you. Can you use it as a workstation? Well, I do. I have been for over a year now. So yes, but be willing to factor in some breakage time, but really, if you just don't update, it doesn't break. So just update when you have 30 minutes to fix something. And honestly, this has always been my benchmark with Arch. I'm with Arch as long as if something does break, it doesn't take me more than 30 minutes to recover.
There it is.
And over a year of using it, that's never happened.
Right.
And as soon as it does happen, I'll probably jump to Debian, like Solid, or I'll do Fedora.
And that's what I did on one of my boxes. I have one box that I do not have any interest in dinking with, and so I run Solid on that, and it works fine.
I mean, the big dirty secret is, depending on what you're using, like me, I mean, I'm using GNOME, I'm updating frequently, it doesn't break for me that often. And I don't know why it does. I know, like for me, actually, I'll tell you what, KDE did break.
So one pro tip that you run in with any distro, especially with Arch-based distros, is let's say you have a network manager issue or some package specifically that maybe the update broke and you had to revert back. And so you're thinking, well, I'll just lock that in place. Be aware, sometimes when you lock a package and then you go to update, you create new problems. So if you update and you have locked packages in the past and you're like, oh wait, this thing stopped working, my internet went down. Check for locked packages. 9 times out of 10, there's your problem.
I'm a Chatham says Arch on his MacBook is breaking constantly. Tennessee says that maybe sometimes Manjaro or Integros might be a little buggy with some updates.
Yeah.
And Capi says, you know what I do is I have a small Debian partition that I have on standby, so if Arch ever does break, I can jump over to that. Those are all good tips too.
Those are excellent tips, especially the latter. That's kind of your thing, is that be prepared for, like Chris said, sometimes you will be troubleshooting stuff. I love Arch all day long, but to tell me it doesn't have bugs is just, that's nonsense.
Well, so what I figure is, like, don't update when you don't have time to fix it. But try to maybe set 30, 40 minutes aside. Yeah. I mean, really, 8 times out of 10 I update, 9 times out of 10 it updates and I don't have any problems.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. But the 10th time, it's usually something stupid that you overlook that will take you 30 minutes to figure out, and then you have a V8 moment afterward and you're thinking, oh my God, how did I miss that? I mean, it happens.
All right, Sam writes in with an alternative to Attic, an app pick from last week. He says, thanks for the Attic app pick. It's a very interesting option, and I'd like to suggest another open source one. Obaman, or something like. It's not Obama. It almost looks like Obama. It's Obnam. Obnam. It offers the same dedupe functionality and fuse file system mounting to get access to what you've backed up. And it's encrypted. It also looks to be like it uses SSH for the communication. It doesn't do well on large like SQL dumps, but it looks like he says it's also another great alternative to Attic if you're looking for a backup over SSH that you can then use. Fuse mounting, he says, one of the nice things is you get the top level directory and you can navigate and compare the backup generations and just cherry pick the files you want right out of that fuse mount.
Nice.
Which is really cool. I have a bit of feedback on like a tale of woe to warn the listener that sometimes there's still a premium price to being a Linux user. So when Oculus first announced the DK2, their development kit for the Oculus Rift, before Facebook bought them, I pre-ordered one, because if you go to their DK2 page for their development kit, where you pre-order it, they give you all the information about the new Oculus Rift, and if you look right here at the SDK, it says the Oculus Rift and the Oculus SDK currently support Windows, Mac OS, and what's that other OS there, Matt? What's that?
The Linux.
Linux. They lie, Matt! They lie. Here it is, right here. I have the Oculus VR right here. I got the new. Oh. It's amazing. It's incredible. And I had to hook it up to the one Windows box we have in the studio to get to try it out. Oh, you Oculus bastards. I bought this thing because your page right there, I'm looking at it right now, says Linux support. And this does not yet support Linux. The SDK version 4 for the Oculus DK2 does not exist for Linux. Well, it's only available for Windows.
Couldn't they have at least done you a solid and like thrown an asterisk next to Linux? I mean, something.
Well, and if you have the old Oculus, it works under Linux. But this
that's how they get away with it.
This is the page for the new DK2 product.
Oh my God! Come on, guys.
But side note, this is amazing.
Is it really?
I mean,
they got porn for it
yet? Probably. It's incredible. I went on a raft in the middle of the ocean.
No way,
really? And just totally was amazing. What? It's incredible. It's really,
you
really,
need to start
really
charging
exciting.
Admission for that thing. I'm telling you, there's your funding campaign right there.
Yeah. So I'll be tracking the Linux support for the Oculus VR because I think this is going to be super cool. And the previous version has Linux support. They haven't updated the SDK for the Macintosh operating system either. For the Macs out there.
I mean, yeah, you think they'd at least do that, right?
So I think it's just one. I think it's going to be for both of them. There's some like new like direct video thing that only works under Windows right now. bogus.
I'm
man.
just picturing the peripherals for this thing. I don't know. It's
going
to be weird.
Oh, man.
It's going to be weird.
Oh, it's going to end civilization, actually. I've decided after trying that out.
What was that one movie like where they had their little robot thems? The people,
Surrogates with Bruce Willis.
Yeah, it's going to be totally that.
Yep.
It really is. And I'm okay with that because I don't leave the house anyway. So whatever,
Yeah.
It'll do my shopping.
It was, I got to tell you, even just the 20 minutes I spent in the virtual world were amazing. There's the demo, the basic demo one. You're just like in this blue holodeck grid.
Is it really like? I mean, that's pretty cool. If there was a way to capture
it's
that,
a little creepy actually. It's a little spooky when I realized, oh, I could live in this world forever.
Oh, it's like what Second Life tried to do.
All right, man, I got to bring it home. Maybe I could edificate myself, and I could go over to Datamation and read some articles. Where would I go, man?
Go to datamation.com.
Datamation.com.
Scroll down to open source. Otherwise, you can hit the show notes and just go to the stuff I've pointed out there. So there you go.
I don't know, Matt. Maybe I don't want to read. Maybe I want to watch.
I'm still, although a bit slower these days, just out of summer, so things happen. We're still doing stuff at Geek and the Gamer. Definitely get to being subscribed. The more subscribers to get, more frequently we can put this stuff out.
YouTube.com/Geek and the Gamer.
That's right. All the very best in gaming and profanity in one stop.
Hey, we have a Jupiter Broadcasting Instagram where we posted some pictures of the folks we interviewed at OSCON, Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. And just after the live show, by the way, Linux Action Show's live. Pro tip. Yeah. Sunday, 10 a.m., jblive.tv, jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get that in your local zone. Time zone. Right after the Linux Action Show, we're going to start the faux show, and it's a special edition. I want to recommend you go check it out. It's how your fellow Jupiter Broadcasting audience members watch Jupiter Broadcasting shows. It's going to be a fun show, so check that out.
Might learn something.
You might. Also, our subreddit, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. Please go there. Help us, get an idea of what you want covered on the show by submitting stories, voting them up and down, commenting with your amazing neckbeard insights, all of those things. We want them over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com, especially of those of you with the red neckbeards. You get extra flair in the subreddit. I don't know what yet.
That would be cool, actually, to actually have neckbeard flair.
Yeah.
Depending on the distro you use or whatever.
That would be amazing. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week.
Bye.
I am not the type. So there are people out there who like to have a car in their garage that they tweak on. Right, you pull it in, you put it up on blocks, you change something out, you put it back on, you take it out for a drive. That's who CRUX is for, and those people are smart. They really know cars really well, and they get a lot of enjoyment out of that process. I am the kind of person who hates that. I would never do that. I don't have time for that. I pay people to do that for me.
Exactly.
That's why I have a mechanic.
That's it too.
So it's I look at CRUX and I look at Linux from scratch and Gentoo in a sense to that same way. Whereas the Arch to me is sort of in that I know what the car parts are, and if I wanted to change my oil, say I just got a weekend and I just got a wild hair and wanted to change my oil because I used to do that, I can.
Sure, that's the key right there.
I don't have to. And CRUX is, before you even drive out of the garage, you got to assemble your steering wheel.
Oh yeah, no, CRUX is literally it's an instruction manual and car parts all over your garage, and then the shells out there somewhere.
And I mean,
really is.
I could have installed XFCE, and I could have had VirtualBox here on my desktop, and I could have said, "Here's XFCE and CRUX, everybody."
Yeah.
But what does that show you?
Exactly.
I think more importantly, we'll talk about CRUX as a distro, its legacy, what it's about, because if you are the kind of person who's going to use CRUX, you don't need Chris and Matt to tell you to use CRUX.
No, if anything, you're actually telling us how to use it.
Yeah. So what we're going to do instead is sort of just learn about a distribution that I don't think a lot of people know a lot about, and that'll be I think what we can add to it. That's our take.